청소년들이 주로 보는 생방송 음악 프로그램에서 남성 댄서가 옷을 완전히 벗어 알몸이 그대로 노출되는 방송사고가 일어났습니다.
생각지도 못했던, 상상도 못했던 부분이었기 때문에 이런 어떤 사고가 발생하는 진심으로 사과를 드리고요.
진짜 너무 충격적이었고 진짜 공중파 방송에서 어떻게 그런 일을 할 수는 진짜.
You are about to witness the most infamous moment in Korean TV history. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the story of how a single live performance led to millions of traumatized viewers, multiple arrests, the cancellation of Korea's most popular music show, and the downfall of an entire musical genre. So the year was 2005, and one of the hottest musical styles in Korea was actually indie rock. Indie bands, meaning bands that were independent from a traditional entertainment company, were trending across the country, and there were groups such as No Brain, Crying Nut, Lazy Bone, Buzz, and more that were amassing huge fan bases and going mainstream. Hoping to capitalize on this new trend, broadcasting stations began featuring more and more of these indie bands, and this included one of Korea's main TV channels, MBC. At the time, MBC had a very popular weekly music program called MBC Music Camp, which is basically kind of like the M Countdown or Inkigayo of its day. This show aired every Saturday afternoon, and in each episode, they included a special segment called Is This Song Good?, which was dedicated to introducing new and upcoming indie bands.
럭스는 홍대 라이브 클럽 스컹크에서 활동하고 있는 펑크 밴드입니다.
This brings us to a punk rock band called Rux, who was selected to feature on the 267th episode of the show. Rux was a four-member group that was founded by its lead vocalist Won Jung-hee, and much like other indie bands, they typically performed in bars and clubs in the Hongdae area, with the group even opening their own underground music venue called Skunk Hell. It was said that when MBC first approached Rux, the members were actually kind of hesitant about appearing on Music Camp. You see, they had never performed on a mainstream music show before, and when they found out that they would have to sing over an MR backtrack, they felt like this would affect the authenticity of their music, and the whole thing just felt a bit, corporate. But that was when Won Jung-hee came up with an idea. Why not just invite a few fellow indie musicians to join them on stage? Not only would this liven up the performance, it could also help increase public exposure of the indie punk rock scene. What a great idea! Except things didn't exactly go to plan, and what ended up getting publicly exposed instead was something nobody asked for. 4 p.m. on the 30th of July 2005 was meant to be a typical Saturday afternoon. People across Korea would have been gathered in front of their TVs expecting yet another family-friendly episode of Music Camp. But what they saw instead was Rux, along with a crowd of over 20 drunk edgelords cursing, throwing around middle fingers, and parading hate symbols on stage. But just when it looked like things couldn't get any worse, this happened. Yup, you saw that right, guys. Now, obviously, I had to censor this for YouTube, but basically, two men wearing clown makeup suddenly took off their pants and jumped about in the center of the stage, with their sausages flailing about in the air. The cameraman attempted to pan away to the horrified live audience, but it was too late. This had been broadcasted live to the entire nation on a Saturday afternoon.
그 순간요 되게 조용했어 엄청. 그래서 엄청 놀라갖고는요 아무도 다 막 소리 지르고 그냥 가만히 있었어.
진짜 너무 충격적이었고 진짜 공중파 방송에서 어떻게 그런 일을 할 수는 진짜.
외국인이었을지도 모른다. 우리나라 사람들이 아니었나 보다.
Worse yet, MBC was known for having the highest camera quality at the time, as they were the only TV station that could do live broadcasts in 1080p, meaning that the Korean public would have literally been treated to a full frontal display in ultra high definition. Considering how over 1 million people had reportedly witnessed the broadcast, this story unsurprisingly became headline news across Korea.
오늘 오후 생방송으로 진행된 MBC 음악 캠프 무대에서 있어선 안 될 사고가 발생했습니다.
Every single news station was reporting on the incident, and so many people were posting about it on message boards that servers reportedly collapsed. Of course, everyone was asking the same questions. Who the hell were these two flashers, and how was something like this even allowed to happen? Well, to answer the first question, the flashers were quickly identified as 28-year-old Shin Hyun-bong from the band Couch, as well as 20-year-old Oh Chang-rae from Spiky Brats. As soon as they stepped off stage, the pair was immediately arrested alongside Rux's lead singer Won Jung-hee, who police suspected of being involved in the scheme. The three men were tested for drugs as police simply couldn't believe that anyone would do something so stupid unless they were high. But strangely, all the results came back negative. Won Jung-hee also completely denied participating in the plan.
그렇게까지 될 줄은 몰랐습니다. 앞으로 저희는 방송에 안 나올게요. 예.
According to Won Jung-hee, there had actually been 3 rehearsals prior to the broadcast, and during these rehearsals, there were absolutely no issues. In fact, the music camp director had even remarked that everyone was being too calm, likely because they were too nervous. I mean, you have to remember that most of these people were underground musicians that had never appeared on TV before. And so, the guests began drinking alcohol in the waiting room in order to loosen up before the broadcast. And Won Jung-hee explained that perhaps the alcohol was what contributed to Shin Hyun-bong and Oh Chang-rae's inappropriate behavior on stage. However, the police didn't believe that this was just some sort of drunk act like Won Jung-hee claimed. After all, if you look back at the footage, not only were they seen exchanging glances as some sort of cue right before the stripping occurred, they were also coincidentally the only ones in clown makeup despite being from different bands, showing that there was definitely some sort of coordination involved. And sure enough, in the end, after weeks of investigation, the police determined that these two clowns had actually spent 3 full days rubbing their last brain cells together to come up with this master plan.
Tragic.
And worse yet, it wasn't even the first time they had exposed themselves like this.
작년 중순경에 홍대 앞 공연장에서 공연 도중 하반신을 노출한 사실이 있는 등 펑크락을 대중에게 강하게 어필하기 위해 범행한 것이 인정됩니다.
As a result, Shin Hyun-bong and Oh Chang-rae were charged with public indecency and obstruction of a business and were sentenced to 10 and 8 months in prison respectively. What can I say? Hopefully, next time instead of choosing to strip, they'll choose to drip, which they can do with the sponsor of today's video, Fashion Chingu. Fashion Chingu is my go-to place for getting the latest K-pop and K-drama fashions. As you guys know, I always do a lot of dance covers, and whenever I see a stage outfit that I really want, I know I can always find it on Fashion Chingu. So let me show you how it works. As you can see, Fashion Chingu sorts out the clothing based on the artist, such as the aespa collection, the IVE collection, etc. And you can also hover on each item to see when it was worn by your favorite idols. For instance, today I have on this top that was worn by Yeonjin from LE SSERAFIM, as well as these baggy jeans that were worn by J-Hope from BTS. Another outfit that I got was this sparkly dress that was worn by Twice's Dahyun. Oh, and Fashion Chingu also sells accessories, such as this little waist leg bag thingy that was worn by Karina from aespa, which I paired with this bodysuit that was worn by Blackpink's Jennie. So if you're also into K-fashion, then be sure to check out Fashion Chingu. And don't forget to use code PLOOPY678 for 10% off. I'll be putting the link to Fashion Chingu as well as all of the items I've worn in the description below. And huge thanks to Fashion Chingu once again for supporting this channel. Okay, so continuing with the investigations, when it came to Won Jung-hee, police couldn't find evidence of his involvement, so he was actually released without any charges. But despite this, his reputation as well as the reputation of Rux were still permanently ruined. This disastrous stage would mark the first and last time that Rux was ever invited to perform on TV, and the band faded into obscurity soon after. For their part in the incident, MBC apologized numerous times. This included apologies from the MCs on Music Camp.
오늘 생방송 중에 불미스러운 사고가 생긴 점 저희가 머리 숙여 사과드리고요. 다시는 이런 사고가 일어나지 않게 저희가 주의를 하도록 하겠습니다. 진심으로 다시 한번 사과 말씀드리겠습니다.
The MBC producers
하면서까지도 전혀 생각지도 못했던 상상도 못했던 부분이었기 때문에 이런 어떤 사고가 발생하는 진심으로 사과를 드리고요.
and a formal apology which was read aloud during their daily news broadcasts. But they still faced intense backlash from the public, reportedly receiving over 10,000 complaints just that Saturday alone. In response, the TV station held an emergency meeting the very next day, where it was decided that Music Camp would be permanently cancelled. This caused dozens of employees to lose their jobs overnight and affected the album promotions of many artists who were active at the time. It wasn't until 3 months later that MBC finally returned with a rebranded version of the show, this time in the form of Show Music Core, which I'm sure you all know and love today. The scandal also caused widespread changes across the entire Korean TV industry, with channels now implementing a 5-minute delay for all live broadcasts to prevent any similar incidents from happening again. Kind of similar to what happened in the United States with the Justin Timberlake incident. And yes, I am calling it the Justin Timberlake incident. But whilst MBC was able to quickly recover from this controversy, sadly, the same cannot be said for Korea's indie music scene. In the aftermath of the controversy, Korea's perception of indie rock really took a huge hit. Many people began to view indie musicians as a negative influence on society, and the genre even became associated with indecency and drug and alcohol use. As a result, police began cracking down on clubs and live music venues in Hongdae, which, if you recall, is where Rux and many other indie bands typically perform. At the same time, major broadcasters across Korea also completely banned indie music for the next 4 years. And it wasn't until 2009 that a handful of indie bands were finally allowed to appear on mainstream platforms. Although by then, the genre had already lost much of the momentum it once had. The incident also caused people to completely lose faith in the idea of independent artists. Instead, the media began gravitating towards celebrities who were managed by large entertainment companies, as they were considered much more polished and safe for broadcasts. Although with all the news coming out recently, I'm not quite sure this is even true anymore. Anyways, this shift paved the way for companies such as the Big Four to completely monopolize the industry, and it also helped solidify the rigid K-pop trainee system that we're all so familiar with today. It's honestly crazy how just a few moments of stupidity could result in such widespread changes across the entire Korean entertainment industry. To those flashers, I sure hope those 5 seconds of fun were worth it. But of course, all this leaves me wondering just how different things might have been if it wasn't for this incident. Would K-pop still be as big as it is today? Or would we all be listening to K-rock instead? Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this video, then I'd really appreciate it if you could give it a thumbs up and subscribe. As always, my research notes for this story will be on Patreon. And last but not least, huge thanks to Fashion Chingu for sponsoring this video. Shinhyun Bum and Oh Changdae, if you're watching this, I guarantee they have clothes you wouldn't want to take off. And with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Bye! Thank you for watching, and special thanks to my Patreon members for supporting my channel. If you'd like to watch reaction videos and other bonus content, then be sure to check that out on my Patreon.